Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Gatekeepers. I am Bishop-Elect Vanessa M. I'm your host and moderator for this evening, and I'm telling you, I'm so excited about tonight's show. But before we get into that, I want to thank our Facebook Live family. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you, YouTube, for being on. Thank you, Twitter, for being on. We're so excited that you're here. Thank you, LinkedIn. So we are on all of those social media platforms. And so, of course, you know, I ask you every week that we're on to shout out where you're from. Please tell us where you're watching from. Make sure that you put it in the chat or in the comment section, wherever that is, so that we can shout you out on tonight. We're so excited that you're here again. And I know that we've been trying to keep up with some things that have been going on in the world. Another shout out to Bishop-Elect Sonia E. Williams and her church crew, REM, and those that were in association with her, Centers for Spiritual Living, Pastor David Alexander, and other entities who helped to take water to Jackson, Mississippi, and who gave, and so much in surplus until she was able to double her amount. What a blessing that was. Thank you so much for your social justice efforts and all of the teamwork that it took to pull all of that together. God bless you and all of those that participated. Okay, y'all telling me where y'all from. Y'all letting me know, and I'm looking right now. Monroe, Louisiana. Thank you, Chuck Hunt, for being here. Atlanta, Georgia is here. New Jersey is here. Good evening, Deacon Ayana. Oh, thank you, Rebecca Brown. We're glad to be here. Glad to be here. Yes, Quentin L. Robertson. Philadelphia is in the house. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Colleen, Texas is here. Somebody said, I'm so excited. Bless you, brother. We're excited too. Oklahoma City is here. Rancho Cucamonga, California is here. Buffalo, New York is in the house. I see you, Benjamin Liddell Reynolds. Bless you. Chicago is in the house. Stone Mountain, Georgia is here. Thank y'all for telling folks to share the live. I appreciate it. Stockton, California is here. Durham, North Carolina is here. Oh, bless you. Irvington, New Jersey. Reverend Dr. Dolores Watson is in the house. Bless you. Thank you for joining tonight. Seattle is here. Charlotte, North Carolina is here. Birmingham, Alabama is here. Wait a minute. This is a blast from the past. Bishop Andy C. Luter is here. Long Island, New York. Bishop, God bless you. So glad that you're on with us on tonight. Thank you for being here. Columbus, Georgia is here. Raleigh, North Carolina is here. Marin County, California. I know about Marin County. Winston-Salem North Carolina is here with us. New Orleans is here. Oh my goodness. Hazel Crest, Illinois is here. Of course, New York is here. Loving that. Dallas, Texas is here. Maryland is here. Brooklyn. Thank you, Pastor Dawn, for joining us. Oh, wow. Jeremy Taylor, Bishop. Jeremy is on. We gonna holler your name out all night. Philadelphia is in the house. Bless you. Raleigh, North Carolina. Yes, yes, yes. I see the Saints are here. I see somebody say all 50 states. Yes, all 50 states. We're so glad to have you tonight. We got a great show in store for you. And so we don't want to waste any more time because it's a lot to talk about. It's a lot to unpack. And so for those of you that don't know, we're going to be talking about HONK for Jesus, Save Your Soul. You know, that's the new movie with Regina Hall and Sterling K. Brown. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's on Peacock, and you have to pay for it, but it's okay. Yes, I see you, Natasha. Thank you for being here. Our resident in lawyer, a lawyer in resident rather, Natasha L. Robinson, South suburbs of Illinois is tuning in. Chicago is packing the place out. Fort Myers, Florida is here. South Jersey is here. Again, Atlanta, Georgia is here. We're so grateful. And so let me just start bringing on the folks. Amen. Tonight, we have Candice Marie Benbow. She's an author and multi-genre theologian. We have Marlon Millner, scholar and theologian. And we have Reverend Dr. Eric A. Thomas, scholar, pastor, and activist. We want to make sure that we greet all of them on tonight. And we're so excited that they're here. Do us a favor. Let's start with Candice. And Candice, do me a favor. Just greet our audience, followed by Eric, followed by Marlon, if you will.
I am so excited to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Hey, everybody. I saw Winston-Salem in the chat and got excited. That's hometown. So whoever that is, that's already family. So really excited to get the conversation started.
Awesome. Dr. E.
Looking forward to the conversation, and I'm so grateful that all of you are joining us tonight.
And Dr. Marlon Millner.
Speak those things that are not as though they were. We'll claim the doctor. But I'm glad to be here. Candice, we double Winston-Salem in the house tonight, all the way from 1131 East 21st Street. And we're glad to be here.
Last but not least, we want to bring in our beloved presiding bishop. And you all know her, and she's going to help me move this along. She's a presiding prelate of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries and the senior pastor of City of Refuge United Church of Christ. Bishop Flunder, please come and greet our audience. And we're going to ask everyone else, if you're not talking, to please mute yourselves.
Well, you know, I'm plumb tickled to be in the company of these folks. This is family night for me. It is good to see all of you. Dr. Eric, my precious son, Reverend Marlon Millner. And I would love to call one of my daughters in the work that we are doing out here. And an incredible student, incredible teacher. It's good to be with you, Candice. It's good to be in your company. And thank you so much, Bishop-Elect, for reeling us all in to this conversation. It's so many things to talk about in this conversation. It's so indicative of so many of our writings, of our preaching, and of our experience of church as we know it. So I am very thrilled to be in conversation with all of you all. I just hate that Bishop Pearson couldn't be here. I know that we got to make sure he gets the video because he is going to wear it out trying to connect. And you may have to have a part two, Bishop-Elect Vanessa. We may have to reel it into a part two. What a joy to have all of you here. And let's talk about what we know. How about that? God bless.
Thank you so much, Bishop Flunder. So it's taken me a minute to pull this together. I was already working on it. I got a few calls from people that let me know I was on the right track and it's something I'm supposed to be doing. And so I decided I'm going to pull these people together. I read something that Candice wrote. I said, yeah, it's time. And then I said, oh, I forgot somebody. And I really wanted it to be Dr. Eric Thomas. And I went to California and I didn't remember. And so he hit me up, and then I was like, I need you on this show tonight. So here we go, right? I believe the Spirit is at work. Somebody said, what are y'all going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about HONK for Jesus. HONK for Jesus, saints. Save your soul. Now, listen, I have laughed at that show. I don't care what anybody said. I was laughing. I thought it was very funny. It's something that people consider a documentary satire, right? But in my opinion, I believe that it is spot on a lot of the areas that it hit. And I hope that people, I think that tonight what we're going to do is unpack what we saw. And so one of the first things I want to say is that this work makes it clear that the church's demise is at the hands of what Patricia Hill calls interlocking systems of oppression, most visible in matrix domination, for example, sexism, homophobia, and patriarchy. So those three things on the table. I know somebody else is going to come back and say something. Now, I want to start with each of our guests, and then I'll let Bishop Flunder chime in. I want us to just have this conversation, and like if we feel like we need to stop and say something, we all know each other. We know each other well enough to let's go in on this conversation tonight. And so my first question is a broad question, but it is a question that I must ask first. What did you think about this film when you saw it? And I'm going to start with Candice.
I will say the first few minutes let me start from the beginning. I had no idea that Jordan Peele executive produced this. Somehow it passed me in all of the promos, everything. So when I'm watching the opening credits and I see Monkey Paw Productions, that's when I said, oh, this is about to be something different, right? Because we know what kind of work Jordan produces. So I went into it completely abandoning what I initially thought it was going to be, which was going to be this raucous comedy that was going to, take our minds away from whatever was happening at the moment. And as I continued to watch it, at the end, I sat and I was speechless. And in the piece that I wrote for Religion News Service, I said, I think it is one of the most critical and important pieces of critique of current Black church culture that we have right now. It is masterfully done. Of course, there are, I was telling someone who was talking to me about it today. They were talking, and I know we'll talk about it, about the church scenes. And I said, some of this stuff has to be highly dramatized to get to the point of the satire that it's making. But I'll say this in closing, I don't think I've seen something that truly made me reckon with the future of the church in the way that HONK for Jesus made me reckon with the future of the church.
That's good. Marlon Millner.
Yes, well, I wrote a little opening statement, so I'll answer your question by reading that, and whenever you all want to cut me off, do that. So I know I'll say some things that really just echo and say amen and ashe or amen to what Candice has already said. But, first and foremost, this intellectual work that I do, I work at the intersection of religion, these categories called religion, culture, and politics, through the lens of the Black experience. And I think that's exactly what we get in this movie. We get a Black experience that causes us to confront these categories of religion, culture, and politics. And, the other thing I would say, because I think, Candice anticipated this. I'm not a film critic, even though I work in Black expressive culture. So I'm not going to, delve into details of cinematography and things of that nature. But I think it's worth saying that I think the Igbo sisters strive to have a film that is both sharp satire, dark humor, and at many moments light and farcical. So they take us on a journey, because the Black church, we know, is both dark and traumatizing and just straight up hilarious, ridiculous. And in doing so, they have not made, you know, a mockumentary. They themselves are careful to say that this is actually not a mockumentary, but rather they expose how Black churches, Black megachurches, blur the lines between performance and reality, between dressing up and stripping down, pun intended. And that is not mocking, rather it is the unraveling of the layers of humanity involved in such a film and in the Black and in human experiences portrayed. Finally, I'll say this, in Notes of a Native Son, published in 1955, James Baldwin, for some, famously says of the country of his birth, the United States, "I love America more than any other country in this world, and exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually." So for me, the best of Black intellectual thought and expressive culture in America is love, which is to say, critique. From David Walker's Appeal to Sojourner Truth's Ain't I a Woman, to Martin Luther King via Prathia Hall Wins' I Have a Dream, or NWA Straight Outta Compton, to Beyonce's Renaissance album and hit song Church Girl, Black culture in America is both often portrayed as outside of or excluded from the proper, and thus not actually culture at all. Therefore, this voice must always demand to be heard. The Ibu sisters clearly represent everyone who's ever gone to a Black church that had questions, could clearly see contradictions in a community, in a gathering, in a social space that nevertheless offers both exquisite rapture and intimacy, but also deep abuse, trauma, and pain, all unacknowledged and often unreconciled. This story, like Candice has already said, demands we acknowledge the pain and pleasure often entangled in these settings and consider what will be our ethics of care and our practices of reflective humility, honesty, and integrity.
I think he's frozen. It's okay. Dr. Thomas. You're muted. There we go.
There we go. Thank you. It's nice going third, because then I can kind of like fill in from what I've heard. I'll be like the artiste of the group. Like I thought that I was going to go see I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, right? The way that the promos and the all of the commercials made you think that you were set us up for one kind of experience. And as Candice said, that first scene, you're like, oh, this is about to be something different. So as someone, my first life was a part of Lincoln Center, Brooklyn Academy of Music, Manhattan Theater Club, National Black Arts Festival. So I'll say that, you know, we go to see the performances, the virtuoso acting performances of Sterling K. Brown and Regina Hall, who both like acted their entire faces off in the movie. But I'm also struck as a person that is doing Black queer theory and Black religious studies, and by the ambivalence. And what I mean is that we're both attracted to and repelled by, at the same time, the things that we're seeing. As much as, and we'll talk about it, but as much as we hate the excess and the capitalism is another one of those oppressions that we might put into that intersection. As much as we want that Prada closet, we're like, the peach Prada, like, really, sir? But we want that, right? So we are attracted to and repulsed all at the same time. I am an out Black gay man, and I was still like, why does he keep on taking his clothes off? But why is he taking his, so like it's like that ambivalence that gets played with in the movie. And I'll leave it at that. Like, we, as turned off by what we see, we also have to reckon with the ways in which we want to be those people. Whether we're the young couple, whether it could be, we spend all this time talking about the older couple, but I mean, you know, as we peep some of these digital hush harbors around, there are a lot of examples of the younger couple that we're not talking about as well. So I thought it was a great movie.
Awesome. We're gonna bring it all together. Bishop Flunder, what say you?
Well, a few things. I think that the pastor, the older pastor, that his creating a mega church with some theologies that I thought were rather weak. I have to be honest with you. I think that the screenplay, I think, should have listened even a little bit more to what kind of preaching is robust in the Black church. Let's just put it that way. The way in which Black preachers have learned the power of the use of words and word pictures and cadence and some of the things that make for a Black church experience that make your hair weave come loose almost, you know, that kind of I think that in some ways there could have been some more work on that, you know what I mean, to make him a little bit more powerful a preacher. But I have to also say, I ask myself, so how did he ever get a mega church? That was what my mind first said, because it was kind of shallow, and obviously shallow, because every sentence ended with him saying something about his shoes or his outfit, and most of the preachers are not that shallow. Let's just, even if they feel that shallow, they don't just come right on out and tell you, my Pradas will tell you who I am. I mean, it's kind of not quite like that. The other thing I thought was what got my attention is that he reminded me a lot. Now, no shot intended, but I guess kind of quasi shot intended. Reminded me a bit of the brother who was accused of stealing his own jewelry from the church. Some of you all know something about that. He sort of put me in the mind. Yeah, you understand what I'm talking about. He put me in the mind of that kind of performance, that even bad news is better than no news at all, or an inappropriate presence is better than no presence. Flashy is flashy, you know, as long as you can be seen. So I thought about that. What really brought it home for me was the sex scene, because it was in that experience that I realized.
Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome. Bishop Flunder?
That's what hit me. Sata. All I can say to you in my best Pentecostal is Sata. I said to myself, when it wouldn't work the way that she asked for it, and certain things had to happen in order for it to work, then the inside of me said, I understand to some degree your advanced Prada, you know, your advanced Prada needs, that this man is, she's a showpiece. She is not, he is not a heterosexual man, at least not entirely. He is doing heterosexual in gay face, if you understand.
He's performing.
He's just, yeah, and that is becoming harder and harder. No pun intended there either, but maybe I should say softer and softer over time. The point is that it ain't working, okay? And she's trying to figure out what's the matter with him, because she was then the person who became what his male friends were to him. And of course, we saw that work out in the way in which he went after the young man that in that scene, you know. And I think that finally the last two things that resonated with me is that somehow or other, he never did fully realize that you can't fix this. All the way to the very end, he was trying to fix it. And that's why I said it kind of reminds me of the brother in the jewelry. You can't just keep, hollering and screaming and choking people and carrying on. You just can't. You can't fix this. There's the only thing that I can think of that can fix debacles like that is that you have to come all the way clean. And I mean all the way. And then wait for a season of people forgiving, because people do forgive. I have found that out to be true in my multiple generations of being in church, and particularly in Pentecostal church. People find a way often to forgive, but trying to fix it with all that weak stuff, that showy stuff, and telling the young people when they can and can't open their church, takes into consideration that he somehow has a power over dynamic where those young people are concerned. And to assume that is haughty at best, but I have seen it played over and over and over again. I know how this goes. And at the very end, he is still on this girl about this hat. They're standing out there trying to get people to come to the church, and he's telling
about how they look, how she look, and
how she looked. Be clear, not
how
he looked.
Absolutely,
how she looked. You understand that you are the reason why we're not getting. In the very last scene, you can see her in that hat, coming to herself, thinking, he is making me and my hat the reason why these people are not stopping their cars and coming to our church. The very last thing he did was blame her, keeping people away for that hat. And in each of those vignettes that I lifted up to you, I saw some of what I know about being raised in the church and churches that raised me. I saw over and over again a repetition of each one of those is a chapter in Candice's next book. There's no question about it. The hat, the way in which she was blamed, the concept about having the power over dynamic with these young people, the idea in some way that he could fix it by performance, right? And the real thing, again, that got me is that how in the world is somebody that shallow ever get a mega church? How in the world did that happen? So there's a lot more that I could say, but those are the things that stuck with me the most, and ended on it being her and the hat's fault.
Right. And so you kind of like we could touch every subject pretty much that you talked about. And so I really want to go back to the sex scene. But no, I don't really want to go back to the sex scene. That was just underwhelming. I want to go to the scene with the boy in the gym, right? I want to go to that scene because that's a very important scene, right? Because it's not that the wife didn't know. You see, she's always known. Even with his non-performance in bed, this woman has always known. But Eric, I want you to shed some light on that scene with him and the young man. And he basically is propositioning this young man. And this young man says, my boyfriend likes it too. To let you know, I'm down, but I ain't down for you. Talk a little bit about that.
I mean, so much. While the movie is going on, we are being reminded of a real life situation that happened, at least one real life situation that played out with multiple victims who come to a settlement and one holding out. So we're thinking about that while all this is happening. And I think that the scene right before that is they get a call that there's some sort of resolution except for one holdout. And it seems like he hasn't put down the phone good 5 minutes before he's in the gym with the sound guy. right? And so there's a way that there's no self-reflexivity, there's no learning. He hasn't learned. He's in denial about about the reality, about the legality, about the propriety of a person of his power, his status, propositioning anyone in his church. But this whole, again, he takes off the shirt and he has this whole, he really thinks that, like he's laying it on. He thinks that he's being charismatic there. And the sound guy is like not having it at all. But the thing that is so powerful for him is for the sound guy to say, my boyfriend likes it. So the facial hair, I could show you how to fix your facial hair. My boyfriend likes it. And the my boyfriend likes it is like this affirmation of agency, this affirmation of dignity, that my worth, my value is not predicated on your attention. And what makes that so important is that so many victims of inappropriate sexual violence, inappropriate ways that pastors and deacons and Boy Scout leaders and other leaders of the church try to take advantage of young men and young women. And some of us have traded body parts for belonging and acceptance. And some of us have kept the secrets of the people who perpetrated us. And we still keep the secrets of the people that perpetrated us. And one of the things that I know for a fact in my seminary experience at the ITC is that I became a safe person for some of my straight colleagues to say, hey, Eric, can I talk to you about something? Right? Because there's a way in which this happens to heterosexual men, that heterosexual men have no outlet to tell. Who are they going to tell? Right? But we've also seen so many configurations of young men around older men of power. And it's kind of like, if you want to speak into that microphone, you've got to speak into this microphone. And there's no way to really expose that. There's no way in this homophobic, heteronormative kind of culture to really dig in and unpack. So I'll just stop by saying the sound guy represented a kind of sovereignty, a kind of Black queer sovereignty, a kind of Black queer authority that says, I am great with my partner, and your advances mean nothing to me.
Love that. Anybody want to add to that?
I'll say one quick thing,
Candice.
just that it's interesting to me, Eric, that at the point that this queer brother asserts his sovereignty, then this is when Lee Curtis tries to trump it with a theological argument, literally saying, well, you can't save everyone, right? As if the line is crossed through that assertion rather than his submission to these advances, right? So that somehow his advances get scripted as divine, and his sovereignty, the brother's queer sovereignty, gets read as like a human, sort of like the Garden of Eden, where, the human beings are doing what they're not supposed to do. They're trying to act in the place of God, or in this case with Lee Curtis, the imperial God-man. So I thought it was really interesting there that you're moving in this direction, and when he doesn't acquiesce, like, save me, he's like, yo, I'm good. I'm saved. I'm already filled with the Holy Ghost, bro. I don't need that. Then it becomes, no, you're not saved for real. And so there is that tension that we know gets used. I mean, there's a everyday way, again, with cis and trans, male identified, female identified people, that ministers basically say it's good if you want it from me. but it's not good if you don't want it from me.
That
Right.
was
And
good.
can I just add, and so
Yep.
then the sin is not the homosexuality. The sin is really the inappropriate use of power. The inappropriate use of power. I mean, go look at 1 Corinthians, the things that Paul is telling the Corinthians in chapter 5 and chapter 6. If you are a slave, male or female, if you are a freed person, you don't have the bodily power to do the things that Paul is saying, stop doing those things. Right. And so it's we can't save everybody, then becomes an indictment because he doesn't realize that he needs to be saved by the inappropriate use of power in that case.
Absolutely.
I want to hear Candice, but let me just say
Yeah.
this line. The way they said it to us is 2 clean sheets can't dirty one another.
Right. My. Write that down, Candice, for your book.
Write it down. That was what we were told. Holy and holy.
Yes.
And when I'm holy, if I take you, I have holified you, because 2 clean sheets can't dirty one another. That's what they told us.
Candice, I want you to talk about this, and then I'm going to lead you into a question right after that about Regina Hall, about the wife.
So it's been really interesting to listen, and I couldn't wait to hear from Eric. But I think one of the things that comes back to what he said initially, that I think this movie underscores, is a question: are pastors even self-reflective anymore? You know, I think that we can take it even outside of this moment of this movie and the context, and even look at just pastors writ large, Black pastors in our context and in our communities now. Are they self-reflective? Like, are they allowing themselves to be held accountable to community, right? You know, we hear too many times statements made from the pulpit about the authority, the divine authority that is given unto them and no one else. And should you check it, right? You have put your mouth, no pun intended, on a prophet. You have done what God says not do, right? Touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm, right? You are a hater. You are all of these things, when we just want you to actually just look in the mirror and like what you see. You know, when we're just calling you to look in the mirror and say, what does it look like and what does it mean for me to be a person of integrity leading people, right? And so for me, that kept being a question over and over again, watching this and then realizing what it means for present day. We don't have enough pastors anymore asking the question, what does it mean for me to lead with integrity? I will never forget sitting in church and hearing my pastor say years ago, nobody has read or knows more Bible in this church than me. So don't check me when it comes to Bible study. Who are you to say that? You know what I'm saying? Or the ideas that pastors go away and get the whole vision for the year, and whatever they say, like they Moses and went up to the mountain and got the tablets, and they come down, and whatever they have said is law for the year is the vision set for the house. When it's a whole bunch of us in this house, right? That God can talk to and that God can that God is speaking to. So I think the greatest question when it comes to pastoral leadership, that the movie and especially that scene coming on the heels, like Eric said, of them settling, and the phone he didn't even hit end before he started running to see who else he could manipulate and harm, is, are you even stopping to think? Just think, you know? And I don't think we're seeing enough of that with pastors.
That was good. Let me lead us into this as it relates to Regina Hall's role, and want to be able to. I want to ask our Facebook Live audience, YouTube, in some short words, put what you thought about the film. I know that Bishop-Elect Sonia Williams put something. She said that the film, it made her ashamed, mindful, and amused at some of the church-wise bullsnit that I both heard and regurgitated under the guise of Black church religiosity. Thank you. And I want the rest of you all to just put what you thought about the movie in the comment section in the chat. But as it relates to Regina Hall's role, let's go to the piece that stands out for me probably the most in her role, with her in whiteface. Let's go to that piece because it says something, right? Being silent, not really having a voice kind of thing. And so I want Bishop Flunder and Candice and all of you all to talk about that. Or shed some light into what else you saw about this woman as well.
Well, I can speak to this. Two things I want to say. One is she got her advice from her mother. When her mother and her had a conversation, and her mother told her about the philandering realities of her father. And she asked her mother, when did he stop? And her response was, when he died. And essentially, her mother was encouraging her to continue. I think I just kind of want to put a bookmark right there. And I want to say to Eric and to Marlon and to Candice and all the doctors and preachers that go in the front and back of your names, that I can remember really, really well. I've said this before online, but I'm going to say it again tonight. That when it was clear to me that I was a same-gender loving woman coming along, the old ladies in the church, by the way, as I've said many times, I did not have to go outside of the church of my birth to be same-gender loving. There's a whole reality in Pentecostal church. I think just really the more seriously Pentecostal we are, the more closets we have. But anyway, my truth is, when I realized who I was, one of the older women in the church came to me and said to me, now listen, baby, we know who you are. That scared me to death at first. She said, we know who you are. She said, but this is what you have to do. She said, you have to get you a little husband. That's what she said. And then you can do whatever you need to do. You just got to get you a little husband. Essentially, her mother gave her what was the prescription in her mother's thinking for how she could keep this man and keep the things that were associated with having him, even if it meant it was whiteface. I think you understand what I'm saying. Even if it meant that she was painted to be somebody that she was not. And I think that was basically what they told me. And as I grew up in church, because this is the church that I still love to this day, as I grew up, I realized that some people have done this for decades. And they have very high positions because they got them a little husband. I'm going to stop right there. God bless you.
And they still telling sisters to go get them a little husband. And that's the problem. Excuse me. I think one of watching that scene, with her mother, explained everything to me. Because the truth of the matter is, you didn't even need that scene to know that she had a woman in her life that was pushing her to stay in this kind of relationship. Like in so many ways, there's a certain ilk of us that get groomed to be pastors' wives, right? Like as soon as you are smart enough or you have, have exuded a certain kind of beauty, a certain kind of intellect, a certain kind of presence, it is that you become what they need in order to ascend to wherever they want to go, right? I will never forget being told that I needed to abandon. I was still in seminary at the time when I came up with Red Lip Theology, but I never forgot being told by someone who thought they were giving me the best advice in the world that I needed to abandon Red Lip Theology because the kind of circles I was in was only going to put me with preachers, and that kind of work would be detrimental to my husband's ascension to wherever pulpit he could get. And I mean, it was the funniest thing to me to hear someone tell me what they thought me getting a master's degree in divinity would do for somebody else and not for me, right? But a lot of us grew up in that kind of space. I saw so many of my homegirls in Trinity. So many of my homegirls saw themselves in Trinity. And we had some come to Jesus moments where it was like, is that me? Yes, it is. Because they had to think about the ways that they left and abandoned their own hopes and dreams, right? To be now the showpiece for somebody who could care less, right? Who forgot how important or never even knew how important a career trajectory and path were and objectives were for you, but just need you to wear the right hat and need you to wear the right suits and need you to make sure that whatever you post on the socials ain't gonna get him in trouble with the deacons and the trustees, right? That this is what so many sisters signed up for. So for her to be in white face that wasn't even the moment for me. It was when she had to come to the space of realizing, after I think his name is Khalil, just put it all out there. And I think in ways that, when he confronted Lee Curtis and was like, I didn't realize I wasn't special because there were so many others, right? There's a moment when you look at her face that you realize she didn't know all of what we think she knew, right? She knew some things, but there's a difference between, is my husband this predatory, or is my husband really in love with some of these people and he playing them in a way that now I have to think differently about everything that I thought I knew. And it's the moment when she says, this is my church, because she has invested as much as she could of what little hopes and dreams that she had and access and proximity to him. And she said, and I will kill him before I leave him. I'd sooner kill him than leave him. Because, right, what do you have? What else do you have when you tell your mama you don't know if you're going to make it and your mama tell you that you lack faith? What else do you have when the epitome of womanhood to you tells you that she stopped praying to God about your daddy and her broken heart when your daddy died? What else did you have other than that? And it is in that moment when she smears it, because she crying, and she starts smearing it, that's when you like, even in her smearing it, this reality that this is a ruse and this is a facade, but I got to figure out how to deal with it. That I got to figure out what I'm going to do here. It's a mess, but it's my mess. And I got to figure out, because I don't have nothing else to go to. That's a sad and heartbreaking reality. And probably one of the most painful things was to see sisters who are first ladies who were extremely vocal and negative on Facebook about the movie and about Trinity's portrayal, because the truth of the matter is, if we were honest and if they were honest, most of them saw themselves in her, and that was the reaction. That if she looked like a fool and it was scripted, what am I up here looking like? And I ain't getting paid. It ain't no reality TV show.
And they got
Right.
the white hats too.
Yeah.
And they going to Bathsheba's bonnets.
What was it? Bathsheba's bonnets.
They
Listen.
going to Bathsheba's bonnets too. So
Right.
if Lee Curtis got Trinity out here looking a fool, and I'm watching it, what this Negro that I'm sleeping next to, what he got me looking like?
I think that's so good. And so to add to this, and it's maybe Marlon and Eric can chime in on this piece. Thank you, Candice, so much. Could it be that the film writer is serving notice also? This is with the white face, okay? So could it be that the film writer is serving notice also on the influence of white capitalistic American-bred Christianity and prosperity gospel that has infiltrated the Black church and the Black prophetic tradition? Marlon.
So there's so many things going on there. If I can, I'm going to answer your question directly, but I want to step back and just say the film, to what Candice just said, when women, first ladies, co-pastors see themselves and they're reacting with anger or denial, I would like to hope, y'all help me here, but I would like to hope I can be an ally in these moments and tell the truth. I mean, Mother Bishop, I have a very painful story. I mean, I had a beautiful friend who earned a PhD from an Ivy League institution, and she loved our church, and now I'm being particular. You're multi-generation, but our church. And she married a guy, an elder who really only had a right blood name. That's all he had. He struggled with addiction and mental illness, and someone we both would have respected said to her, I cannot find a scriptural justification, not for divorce, because he said he could not find that, but for even saying, get to a place that's safe. So here's a woman who has earned a PhD, is an elite, on a trajectory to be an elite scholar, but loves our church enough to condescend to humiliation. And today, literally, she's dead from cancer. I mean, she died too young, died of abuse. Like, I'm horrified that no one has tried to settle the score for this person. And one could say, well, that's not my story, but I have seen this. I mean, the truth is, my mother, right? I struggled. I had to preach one of 2 funerals for my mother, and I was determined to preach the truth, right? I was determined to preach the truth. And so that's one. But so there's got to be some truth telling. And so I've got to struggle with, why are people angry? So then, to your point, I mean, there's a way in which what I think about in that pivotal closing part of the movie is, one, first, Lee Curtis had said in bed, he said, something, I'm paraphrasing, like, baby, I need your mind. I need your ideas. And her idea was Black Jesus, right? Her idea was Black Jesus. Now, so one of the terms I'm thinking here is, Black Jesus does not work for Lee Curtis. So he tells his wife, go put on whiteface, right? So her innovation, which is to turn to Black Jesus, we can think here, we could play with this, Jacqueline Grant, white women's Christ, black women's Jesus, this innovation, this wrestling, this constructive imagination that black women have with Christianity. He dismisses this and says, demean yourself to being the mule of the world, right? In mime, right? She's a mule for capitalism, for cis heteropatriarchy. And then that's undone when one of his persons he was a predator toward, but you know, it reminds me of the novel Corregidora, like, you know, it's this entanglement of both desire and predatory, you know, violence. And yet she's like, she doesn't even get that. She doesn't even get the benefit of this entanglement. She's only instrumental. She's always instrumental, no matter what she's bringing. And to me, that's the moment that she reckons with, for example, on Sunday when she refuses to take off the hat. I'm no longer going to be merely an instrument here, an adornment, right? One more piece, you know, to go with your suit and your car. I am, as she said, this is my church. So, but to me, the white face is even rejecting this her constructive, imaginative, theological innovation, saying, I'm doing my best. You asked me to think and, you know, ponder and become imaginative about what we can do. And then it gets rejected to submit yourself to the predatory market, right? So that I can be propped up. And we have to tell the truth about you know, I think the only thing, well, not the only thing, but a thing I can do as a cisgender heterosexual man is tell the truth about these things. Because that example I led with is just terribly painful to me and is indicative of this movie.
And I think, let me say this. I think in telling the truth, particularly for men, and not saying that this is what you're doing, but I think it has to be very clear who the primary predators, even in a situation between Lee Curtis and Trinity, are. You know, is that we don't have enough men who are holding men accountable for the ways that they create the conditions that require women like Trinity to figure out how to survive, right? So I can say to my homegirl, I can say to my sister, yeah, I see you, and I saw you in her, right? And then I can also make room for the ways that she is very honest about what life will look like outside of that bubble and outside, because what we don't often talk about are when women leave, or when women are very honest about the violence and the manipulation that they experience at the hands of pastors, what happens to them, right? And so I think in a Trinity, what we see in Trinity is she's both victim and accomplice, right? That she is someone who, whatever I need to do in order to make this as palatable for me, I know I'm eating, as my grandma would say, like, when you know you gotta eat crow, and when you know you eating some mess, give me some hot sauce, give me some sugar. She trying to find the hot sauce, she trying to find the sugar, she trying to find everything she can to make this easy to swallow. And I think that what breaks my heart is that we don't have, and it's something that I think I and so many other women are trying to do with our work, is to create the space for a Trinity to be able to feel that she can be honest and she can be safe in her honesty, right? Like, there's very little that you can do to tell a sister that she can be safe with her truth if she can't even be honest with her mama. You know what I'm saying? Like that, like, and when we talking about church folks, right? That like the moment that you tell somebody that you think that you can trust in the church, everybody knows your business. And so I don't think that we have enough safe spaces for sisters like Trinity, for sisters to be able to say, okay, well, can we talk? Right? Like, you know, let's first start with the fact that where the heck did we get this whole notion of a first lady anyway? Right? Like, I mean, I grew up, my pastor's wife was Miss So-and-so. She was a teacher or she was a nurse. She had a job. We respected her because she was the pastor's wife, and that was who she was. But her position was not an office of the church. Like, we now live in a moment where pastors' wives have adjutants and they have assistants, and it's like, to do what? Right? You know, there's not enough room and space. And I think that that is where I wonder where we go with a Trinity, is to say, what do we do with women? How can we speak to women who are so wedded to these identities and so wedded to the power of their husbands, because we've created a society that literally tells them that they are nothing without it. Like that, what do we do? And I mean, and I'm not saying that I have the answer to that, because of course I don't. But I do think that that's the biggest piece, is like, we do all this deconstruction of them and what they need to do and create the space and get the society and the structure still stands that says, who are you without these men? And some can't answer that question.
Thank you so much, Candice, for that. Before Eric comes, people are Eric, mute yourself, please. Here we go. People are asking, what are we talking about? This is Honk for Jesus, save your soul. And we're talking about this because art imitates life, right? And so what's happening in that movie is actually being lived out in some churches around the world, mega churches and some small churches too. So we have to talk about it, because we need to, as Candice said, we want to try to get to the root. And we know what the root is, you know, and we want to try to fix some of these things if we can. So that's why we're having this conversation tonight. Bishop Flunder.
I'd love to hear from Eric. And when he does speak, there is one thing I'd like to share, but I'd love to hear from you too, brother.
I'll try to be really, really quick. There are two musical moments with that face. Some of you might know the opera Pagliacci. So like Vesti la giuba, e la faccia inferina, la gente paga e ride vuole, you know, he's saying, I've got to put this makeup on and make the people laugh, and even though my heart is breaking. So like the smear, like, just reminded me of that moment. And I'm making my way backwards. Never would have made it. Can we exegete the you in the never would have made it without you? Who's the you? As she's doing those movements in that moment, right? Of all the songs for her to pantomime to, what was that? And we've got to shout out Anita, right? Because Trinity has been speaking to Anita, like, can we cut? Can we stop? Can we, you know? So we get an idea of who Trinity really is as she's speaking to Anita all throughout the movie. And then when the scene happens and she kind of, Regina Hall takes the movie away from Sterling K. Brown, in my opinion, with all of the monologues that come after that. Anita's voice says, why don't you just leave? And she just, you know, we get to see all of that complexity in that. And I'll leave it there. I'll give it over to Bishop Flunder.
Yes, and Bishop Flunder, before you go, the fact of the matter was that Regina Hall was the beard. She was the cover, and every single thing that she did was to cover her husband's foot. I don't care what it was. Even when she walked into the gym, she knew that he was coming on to the guy, right? But her thing was to scold him and rebuke him and say, get your shit together because we already in trouble, bro. All right? And so I'm trying to keep the throne that I'm on too. Basically, she told him that too. Like, I put a lot of time, a lot of blood, a lot of sweat into this. I'm trying to still maintain what I have, and you mucking it up. Bishop.
And after you have given years of your life, sometimes women think there's no option for a second career. For lack of a better way to say that. And I was thinking, I'm going to tell you something that I saw. And because Dr. Fred Price has gone to heaven, I feel good enough to say something that I saw, that I experienced. He was in the pulpit, and it's a video, so it's not a secret, but he was in the pulpit, and some of the members of the church had said some things because Sister Price was among a number of people who came to church late. Because there was a time in which, because he had a broadcast, that you had to be in your seat when the broadcast came on. And when she came in, apparently she came in late and came down the aisle and sat on the front seat. And he made a public announcement. And he said, essentially, from now on, the doors will be closed and locked at X time. And I don't care who you are. If you come in here beyond X time, whatever that time was, I've forgotten, the doors will be locked and you will not be able to get into the church. And he said to his wife, and that includes you. Now, let me say a couple of things. She gave stone face, which is something else you learn very early. Non-reaction. She gave him complete stone face, and people gasped. You know, it was like that, but it was enough of them that you could hear it. And he said, and some of you wonder, why would Sister Price take this from me? That's what he said. Why would she allow me to speak like this? He reached into her purse and got the keys to her Mercedes, pulled the keys out, and he said to the people, this is why. Everything in me turned into something. I just need to tell you this just so that you will hear my heart on this. Everything in me turned into something. But it is not something vicariously that I would pass to her because I don't know her circumstance. She outlived him, but I don't know her circumstance. Essentially, I didn't know it then and I don't know it now. But it does beg the question. At what point are you so far along in it that you feel like there isn't anything else that you can do? Now, my mind said, if I had my pocketbook would have found itself upside his head. That's what would have happened if that was me, right? But I don't know her reality. In some cases, that's all. That's the only place where her money comes from. That's the place where her children will have a future. That's the place where she's already invested too much of her life to start over somewhere. I don't know what made her stone-faced, but she was perfectly stone-faced and stayed that way under that fabulous hat and those designer clothes all the way through that service. And I said to myself then, when I was thinking about this the other day, there's a type. And there is a type. And where I don't understand it, I cannot understand it for myself. Of course, I cannot understand it for myself. I would like to be able to understand it for all the Trinities out there, though. And if we don't say anything else tonight, I think it is important that the Trinities out there, whoever you are and wherever you are, that the God that we know can serve up something that is better for you. And even if the Trinities are God Trinities, I want to say it to you, that the God that we know can serve up something better in your life than for you to accept abuse as though there's nothing else that you can do. It takes courage to do what we're talking about, right? And it's just one other little piece. And you may have to downsize and then resize later on. That's a different conversation. But the other piece that I think is important to say is to pick up. Okay, I'm getting all kind of trouble for this too, Marlon. Here I go. Pick up the innuendo, right? What do I mean? One of my dear friends, Pastor Andre Crouch, who I knew for years and years and years, and a dear friend, he and Sandra both, our families would join together in the early families that came to California to do work here. And there was a point in time in which Andre wrote a song, I'll be thinking of you, yes, thinking of you. You know that one? Though we're far apart, you're in my heart, right? And I kept waiting for him to talk about Jesus. And it was on a gospel recording, but it never did say anything about Jesus. People tried to make it be Jesus, but it really never did say nothing about Jesus. You understand what I'm saying? And it left me with this as this statement, Bishop-Elect Vanessa. When people tell you or show you who they are, believe them. When your heart says, oh, I know what that means. Oh, I understand that, right? I found, I'll quit right there. But it is important for me to say that when people show you who they are and what their needs are and where their hearts are and where their minds are, believe them, no matter what their external showpersonship says and does. Believe them.
Believe them. I love that. So I want to ask the audience if they have questions. I know I don't have a lot of time, but I do want to do that. And I still want to say something else about this film because people are so angry. It's like, people are really, really, really like hot under the collar about this film. But what this film is doing is exposing things that need to be exposed and continue to need to be exposed and continue to need to be exposed over and over and over again. And there are so many lessons to be learned in this film if you are really looking at it and paying attention to it. It has so many things. Yes, Eric, go ahead.
I wonder what people think about the family that stayed with him. Is it that they are they faithful to the couple and to the church, or do they just not know? And just shout out to the daughter who starts speaking in tongues and says, "I like theater."
I love the theater.
I love theater.
That was oh my God. But you know what? The elder couple did know, because remember, she kept trying to justify it by saying, well, we always had people like that in our church. And you remember that choir director, and he was doing orgy. So it was this whole idea, right? That we know and folks know, and yet it doesn't matter as long as they're saving souls or as long as they are visibly successful, right?
And as long as you get a little wife.
Hell, as long as he got a little wife, exactly. And part of, you know, to quickly talk about the little girl, so many people were offended and were so adamant and angry about that scene. But for me, what they did with that scene was really use it to critique the sheer foolishness that happens in our churches, right? First of all, I had to tell one of my homeboys who is a preacher, who's a pastor, I said, we're not gonna act like that there is not an element of theater in Black church. Like, we not finna sit up here and act like you don't tell your praise and worship leader what you preaching so that they can make sure that all the songs align that Sunday. Like, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna act like pastors, which was why, again, this movie was so genius, because even Lee Curtis taking off his clothes at the altar, I told my homeboy, I said, we're not gonna act like preachers don't know the right moment to unbutton the cufflinks and the right moment to unbutton the top button and move the tie, loosen the tie, so that it seems as though you are in a spiritual frenzy. But what it is you know that is going to entice the very people, right? That you say, you know, that you don't care who's looking. It is going to entice the very people that you want to entice for several reasons: for response, for reaction, for resources, right? We're not going to act like that this is not an orchestrated event. So when she says, I love the theater, it's, y'all ain't even getting this past babies, right? Like, at this point, it's so obvious that even the kids know it. And if you want to pretend like you don't know it, that's your fault. That's your fault.
I want to read something that someone posted. He says, as I watched this, I felt like once again, homosexuality became the spotlight of the pathology in churches. Sexual predators are not the genesis nor the totality damaging praxis in the Black church. There are young women victims, probably in large numbers than same gender loving folks. There are other non-sexual violations that foment church hurt. So he wanted to say that. Yes, Bishop.
He's right.
Yes.
I mean, it's probably, well, let me back up and say that the cloister often does not care. You know, if what there's the, okay, I'll go ahead and say it. You know, I'm old and I can say most anything I want to say. So the penetrator just needs a penetratee in many situations. And some people are particular about who that is. But that can happen spiritually, it can happen physically, and it can happen across gender. It can happen, you know, as one man said to me, I need help, Bishop Flunder. I said, what is it? He said, well, you know, I like boys. I said, you like boys? He said, yeah, you know, I have boys. I said, so what does that mean? I like boys too. He said, no, I like boys. I said, tell me, what does that mean? This is a preacher with a significantly large church. He said, I like boys, you know, like I like women. I said, so I still need a little more help, because I need to understand what is exactly that you're trying to tell me.
That's right.
You know, he's telling me that he's a penetrator, and he moves that reality from one reality to another as it relates to gender, and that he needs help, and he wants to know if I can help him. So that's why you want to talk to me. You want to know if I'm able to help you. Well, you can imagine the kind of conversation that we had as it went on. And then he told me that he feels badly, and sometimes he uses substances so that he doesn't feel badly about it. And my response to him, as you can imagine, after a long, protracted conversation, is that you need some help in the truest sense of the word, and you're going to have to get some professional help to help you understand that you cross a line, not because you're a penetrator, but because the people, that particularly young people, that you're a predator on, essentially, will themselves begin to feel that it is okay to be predatory. Not only are they diminished by what you're doing, but you're teaching a lesson. There's a lesson that you're teaching that will go on. How many of us know about multiple generations of that kind of reality? When two clean sheets can't dirty one another. There's something to be said about the importance of this. So there's all kinds of ways that people use power to cross lines.
I think it's so good that you're saying this, Bishop, because the scene in which the young man who accused him, at least one of the young men who had accused him, had gotten out the car and confronted him, and then basically decided that the confrontation wasn't worth it.
Right. He was
Right.
useless. He was
Right.
already torn down. You don't have to
Exactly.
tear him down anymore. He
Yep.
has torn his own self down.
He could see that young man could see where he was, and which is why he said, I looked up to you. I needed you. Right? I needed you. And it was as if Lee Curtis was like, he was stunned. Right? Because I don't know if he had an expectation of the man even saying, I don't know what he thought. I don't know if he thought the guy was crying, it was going to be broken down or whatever, but that was not the case.
I wanna say something really quickly, because I agree wholeheartedly with the comment. I think what is important too is to when you think of the generation that the Evo sisters are a part of, like these are millennials, and teetering on Gen Z. And as a millennial, one of the things that I have been talking to a lot of my friends about is just how different we approached this scandal, the Eddie Long scandal that this is loosely based off of, that scandal then than we do now, right? That there were many of us who side-eyed, who had some very inappropriate, well, I mean, they did it. It wasn't what it was supposed to be. And it was this really, it was a moment for us to reckon that we were not, many of us did not respond then the way we are responding now and would respond now. And I think that in so many different ways, you see what are these sisters also trying to get us to think through by hearkening back to that particular, because that was for my generation the biggest church scandal that we had known. Our first introduction for a lot of us into national church scandal. Unfortunately, it's happening once a month now. So we seeing foolishness all of the time. But this was the first time that we was like, wait, like we watching this man on TV before we go to our own church, right? Like we watching him, and we are committed and connected to his ministry because he's a cool pastor. He's not our old, senior citizen pastor in the churches that we came from. He's young, he's hip, he's cool. What he's doing is innovative. What you mean he doing this kind of stuff, right? And so it becomes a very interesting moment to look back on how we approached it then to now with all of the language and experiences that we have. Lastly, I'll say this too. There is a there is a very interesting piece that I really would love to hear or see someone write about, is because you get HONK for Jesus filmed in what is now House of Hope Church, which is Greater Travelers Rest, which many people talk about as a church where several people who left New Birth at the time went to. But even before that, the actual church itself, right, was the site of one of the biggest scandals, with Bishop Polk, who was this white bishop who Black pastors and Black bishops heralded as the man that they wanted to be, right? That Bishop Polk, because he said racism was a sin, we elevated this, they elevated this man, his ministries, the music, everything he had, and he had a lot of Black members in his church, only for it to come out about his sexual violence and abuse against girls, only for it to come out that his nephew that he left the church to found out that he wasn't his nephew, but he was actually his son, and all of the other mess that was happening in that church. So you have all of this actual literal context as the site where this movie that is giving us space to critique current church, right? It's foundational to. It is the context that is sitting on that unfortunately shows us that some of the legacies of our churches are not good ones, right? That there are some legacies, there are some traditions that are continuing. There is a thread, there is a line, there is a root that even as we are talking about life imitating art and art imitating life in this quote unquote mockumentary, we have the real added reality that we got a whole nother set of victims that this movie didn't even talk about or touch, but have to, if they were to watch this, have to relive a certain trauma because they're seeing the very church where they were attacked. Like there's so many layers to it that are deeply painful and wounding, but still have to be lifted up so that we can recognize what all needs to be killed at the root.
So many layers. And unfortunately, we're not going to get to most of it, right? We talked up top, right? And we brought a lot of good things to view. One of the questions we have is there any significance to the name of the First Lady, Trinity? Anybody have a thought about that? No, nobody.
As the resident Baptist / Apostolic Pentecostal on the panel, I mean, some people have criticized this film for not recognizing the Black church, and I think it's in nuances like that. So her name is Trinity, and yet she makes this passing reference at one point that she's talking to the documentary film crew that although she was raised apostolic and Lee Curtis was raised Baptist, that they got along. And so I think I think there's a way in which this film, even when we get to her in whiteface, and we're talking about that reflecting, sort of cis hetero patriarchy and capitalism, there's a way in which this film says all of the things that we used to make differences and divide about, neoliberalism has kind of swallowed everything up. I mean, there was a time, as many of us know, that, PAW and Kojic folk would be ready to cut each other. And, I'm going to hell because I went over here with the easy believism, smoking and drinking Baptist. And, in Winston-Salem, Candice, you know, some of them church secretaries got the ashtray in the office.
My aunt at church secretary. Go watch it.
They're going to hell too.
Reflects how.
Well, not us, because we Baptist. So we get to do that. Y'all
do that, right? We get to go to the chairman of the deacon board's cookout, and I mean, he hasn't brought the drinks for the cookout. It's like I have a bar in my den, like I keep it stocked. So, but all of that aside, there's a way in which this movie wrote all of the things that would have been considered differentiation and fragment. It has all been rolled up into, if you can portray success, if you can articulate prosperity, all of those other things don't matter. Like those all can be taken away. And that's, I don't have any, you know, there was no, honestly, black church, black prophetic church. You know, Du Bois conjured up, he constructed an identity that he aspired for the church to be. And some of us have been living and writing and building our careers as pastors and intellectuals off of this literally fabricated notion of the black church. But be that as it may, we have to recognize that this prosperity now that has taken up everyone, and these vestments and success, you know, to Candice's very early point, can we get some people to be self-reflective? You know, can pastors stop and think about why they're wearing vestments, or why they're telling people who are in poverty, you know, sow a seed? The one other thing I'll say real quick, non sequitur to the question, is I thought about this a lot. Bishop Flunder, I honor you and I extol you for your long-term comment early on about, and we're talking decades ago, we need to have a non-punitive discussion about human sexuality. Because the thing, and I don't know, I don't have the answer on this, but I can tell you as a preacher in black churches, I'm gonna say it the way I feel I was supposed to preach this weekend, but I have listened to so much shit, right? And I have been given credit like you, Bishop Flunder. Oh, Marlon, we can talk to him. I mean, I have just had brothers tell me a lot of horse shit. And that's what has to be reckoned with, because and not this dressed up stuff now where like we do workshops where we can acknowledge depression as if depression is the one-all catchphrase for mental illness. So now we can acknowledge, you know, I don't know, proclivities as sort of a catch-all word for, no, we have to have a mature, transparent, and it can't just be bros over drinks at big churches conference. Like it's got to be more, the reckoning has to be in public and out loud. On the one hand, because I'll say this, I was just in a setting, and I was in a setting where it wasn't a mega church, but someone had passed, and I learned only a couple of years ago, before this recent passing, that there had been a same-sex scandal akin to the one on which this movie is loosely based. Adult interaction alleged between men, which, I mean, honestly, hey, if they're consensual, that's like, y'all good. But of course, if we're in these holiness, traditional black church, all of that's loaded onto it. And one of the deacons in the church got up and said something very interesting related to my use of the word love and critique earlier. He said, you know, I used to love this person because of, and this was the only person who alluded to this in the whole service. He said, but I learned to love him in spite of. And I wonder about that in their relationship, what kind of honesty and transparency had to take place for him to be able to say that. And there were family members that could not make those gestures for this person in this service. And so I guess the only thing I take hope from is there are some everyday people who, you know, if there's a path forward for us, it's that everyday black folk could be ready to love us all in spite of, if we can just be transparent and upfront. They're prepared. And I think many of us just think We preach about, we actually preach a God of hate. We don't believe that God is prepared to love us in spite of. And so, but that's where I think it is. And so I thank you for how you decades ago introduced, because if we can't talk without pointing fingers and judging, then we can't reckon. Yes, we need, as the John the Baptist said, the fruit of repentance, but we also need abolition. We need the end of judgment and punishment and demonization and damnation. And so it's going to take a lot of loving in spite of to do that, if it's possible.
Yes.
And I would say, because we serve a God that is not limited, a God of abundance, that God can be a God that loves us in spite of, just as it can be a God that loves us because of. So I'll pick up Bishop Flunder, and I'll paraphrase: "It was God's will for my life that I am a same-gender loving woman." And so I am clear every day that God loves me because I am Black and queer. And the rooms that I get to walk into and the places that I get to be because of all what this is. So I am not going to create a binary, because God is so big that we can have people who love in spite of and because of, all at the same time for this greater world, right? And I just don't want us to lose the fact that in these places with this with both male and female victims of this inappropriate attention, that you don't just walk into a pastor's office in mega church or in small churches. You've got to walk past the deacon, the secretary, the security guard, the sexton, the left-hand person, the right-hand person. So there's also a part of this conversation where we have to hold church folk accountable for seeing these four victims, who all think that they're special, all walk past the security cameras and the security guards and the secretaries and so forth. And so I want to lift that up, and also the strangeness that the guys who were driving with the young man in the car, that he has a support system. That he had a support system. Now, could you imagine if all of his homies knew why he was confronting the man, and that they had his back like that? Oh, for a world where men who had those kinds of experiences could grab the homies and have that kind of support. And that's unique. That's not normative. That's actually quite queer in the best kind of way. And I'll concede the floor.
Thank y'all so much. This has been wonderful. There are 3 questions in the queue. I know y'all see them. I'm just going to read them, but we cannot answer them tonight because it's going to go on and on and on. One question says, how do victims of spiritual abuse recover? That's a really long, that's a whole show by itself, right? Another question says, how can the church manage the many scandals and the associated trauma? That's also another show by itself. Outside of this platform, the bloggers and movies, the church remains carefully quiet. And the last question is, why is the transparent conversation on sexuality the thing that is feared to bring the Black church down? This is good. These are questions. I know Bishop wasn't going to let that go.
It's really wrong for you to put those questions up and then try to say goodnight. So
I'm just saying,
we may have to come back again. We may have to pick this up. This is
Okay.
worth talking about, if nothing else, than what is happening in the Southern Baptist churches. If nothing else, than what our young people are experiencing in their exodus from the church. We are going to have to take the courage to have a full-on conversation about the non-binary realities of our great God, and be able to talk about this openly and honestly. And I think Bishop-Elect Vanessa, you need to get to work on that with haste. God bless you is my prayer.
This is good. I can do it with haste. I can actually do it next week, depending on who's available. So I will talk to everybody. Once we get off, I'll shoot an email to people to find out. I think this is a worth going down the street a little bit more, and to have more conversations. There are more questions. There are things that we didn't touch on tonight that I like to touch on as well. So, yes, I say yes and amen. I want to thank Candice Marie Benbow. I want to thank Dr. Eric Thomas. I want to thank Reverend Marlon Millner, and certainly to our Bishop Flunder tonight for being here. I want to thank all of the Facebook Live, all of the YouTube, and all of the Twitter folks that are here with us on tonight, as well as LinkedIn. We appreciate you so very much. We want to do some advertisement for you, and then we want to get out of your way.
God bless you, beloved. We are so glad that so many of you have joined us from all the different ways in which you can join us out there in virtual land. And Beyond the Gatekeepers is consistently doing the work that so many of you have asked us to do, to tell the truth, to be transparent. And I'm going to encourage you to please support our broadcasts by sending a donation. Help us to extend our reach. Help us to continue this work. You can do it via Cash App, $ TFAM Annual, or through PayPal at www.paypal.me/TFAM Justice. Please help us. There's so much that can be done if we can work together as a community and as seekers of truth. God bless you.
Thank you, Bullet in Flight Radio. And for everybody that wants to hear us, you can hear us on Bullet in Flight Talk, a podcast, Bullet in Flight Pros. They're now on Podbean. And so we can find Beyond the Gatekeepers on Podbean as well. Thank you, Antonio Mattier, Lifestyle Realtor. He is saying donate to your church, give to your church while accomplishing your goal of home ownership. Lifestyle Global Properties will donate 10% of the commission earned from your real estate transaction to your choice of COR or TFAM in your name when you utilize their brokerage to purchase or sell a property, residential or commercial in California or Georgia. You can go to his website at antonio@antoniomatier.com. You can go to his website at www.antoniomatier.com. You can email him at antonio@antoniomatier.com. Please support Black businesses. Rim Fellowship United Church of Christ, where their senior pastor is Bishop-Elect Sonia E. Williams, is inviting you to join them on Tuesday nights for Bible study, Wednesday morning prayer, Children's Church. For more information, visit their website. Services start at 1 p.m., and you can go to their website and find more information, www.rim.com. atl.org, or you could just give them an email. Send them an email at rimatlanta@gmail.com. Thank you for your support, Bishop-Elect Sonia E. Williams and Rim Fellowship. The Healing Place Apothecary. This is a company that is founded by Newbie and Flunder. She is the daughter of our presiding bishop, and you can go to our website at www.thp, which stands for the Healing Place Apothecary.com. That's www.thpapothecary.com. There you will find stuff for your skin, rose water, root oil, black soap, daily greens, raw shea souffle, daily fruit. Please make a purchase, support Black businesses. And then this month, September, is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And you can go to Sky Michelle Tees and Things and find out that there are so many shirts that you can purchase. Go to www.skymichelle.com. Sky Michelle is the kid boss, and you can follow her at I Am Sky Michelle on Facebook and Instagram. Again, please support. If you purchase a shirt for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, $5 will go to a cancer awareness organization. Thank you so much for your support. Support Black businesses. And we have grab your favorite morning beverage and join us on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard, 9 a.m. Central, and 7 a.m. Pacific time. The show is inspired by Kara. And the host is Susan A. Weberly. She's the founder of Kara Solutions. She's highlighting BIPOC entrepreneurs, influencers, and creatives on a mission to change their communities and the world. You can watch them live on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And then you can listen later on Spotify, Amazon Music, and on Google Podcasts. Please support. Advertise with Beyond the Gatekeepers. You can send us the email, beyondthegatekeepershow@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your support. We will see you all on next week, and God bless you all.